Welcome to the show Gold Squadron Gays. It's the podcast where two Star Wars loving gays talk about and review their favorite Star Wars content while also being gay as hell. I'm your host, Bradley Brower.
I'm your other host, Charles Rogers, and Bradley and I have matching microphones now.
We're a rainbow squad.
We are a rainbow squad. We're continuing to be a rainbow squad.
Well, it is Pride Month, so we figured, you had to.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason I went for it, is because I do love for the visual component of it. I do love the idea of both of us having the same, I
love it.
Rainbow flashing that's happening.
It's so much fun. And then if for some reason you're like, I don't want the rainbow, you can pick a color, or you just tap the little button on the top and it'll change color.
Ooh, so. I didn't even know I could do that. I am not going to hit the microphone.
Well, yeah, I'm going to do it while we're recording. But yeah.
But I'm learning so many things about my new mic. I love it.
Maybe during your other show, you can pick a different color. You know what I mean?
Yeah, when I'm recording for Light and Dice, maybe
go.
I could pick a different color to be. Maybe I'll pick blue or green.
That would be fitting for your character, right?
The character that I play is in fact a Duros. Speaking of shows,
are they all blue?
Blue
Bluish
or green or
right?
Bluish green. They are somewhere in between blue, green, and sometimes gray.
Oh, okay.
But they can move between kind of those three colors.
Right.
Speaking of shows that don't have Duroses on them, I think Temptation Island would definitely have benefited from a Duros on it. Any of them. I think Cad Bane. I think we should put Cad Bane on Temptation Island, Bradley.
Well, he already has relationship issues, and we will talk about that in a few
We will
months.
talk about that in a couple of months, yeah. Oh, Lord. Well, what other shows is Cad Bane not in? What are we talking about?
Today we're talking about Andor Season 2, Episode 6, What a Festive Evening. Vel and Cinta to Gorman, Cassian home to Bix, an argument, a heist, a party, everything at risk. Charles, what's one thing you liked about this episode and one thing you did not?
One thing I really liked about this episode, continuing on the trend from last week, I talked about how sexy Cassian is in his costume and how good the costume is generally. We get the Senate investiture outfits in this one. Holy fucking shit. Holy fucking shit, the outfits are gorgeous. Everything from Mon's outfit, to Clea's outfit, to Krennic's outfit, to the dress Imperial uniforms that I don't think we've ever seen before, which is completely wild.
Every character is a fashion girly.
Every character in this episode is a fashion girly, and I love it so much. One thing I didn't like about this episode, again, I have to look at it in the broad context of the show. This episode is really good. This episode is really great. It's so intense. It's so insane. I do wish, because the whole point of this arc has been for them to steal the weapons, to show people that they're actually building an armor. And I don't think we ever really get the follow-up on that. We never really, that never really comes up in the later arc. And I do wish we'd gotten a little bit of the fallout from this episode. I feel like, particularly with what happens in it between the Ghormans getting armed, because now they're an armed insurrection. That's not really something that's brought up in the show, but it's something that's the ISB's plan, to what happens with Vel at the end of this episode. We don't really get a lot of time to process that after it happens. We kind of have to move on to the next arc. So that is one thing that I wish we'd gotten maybe a little more of an epilogue or something even in the next episode to follow up on some of this stuff that's established. But the show is hacked to the fucking bone. So we got what we got. What we got is still really good, but I do think it continues to need more to let some of these plot points breathe. What about you, Bradley? One thing you liked and one thing you did not.
I have to agree with you. My one thing I did not like was there is no fallout. And so funny enough, in reality television, that's what we call it after we do a thing, like an event or something like that. There's always something we call fallout, which is what happens after, right? And the problem with the third episode of all these episodes, while they are good in kind of wrapping up the bow, hopefully, in the arc, I feel like, which they do for the most part. I think this one, yeah, there was just too much where it was like, I need to know what happens right after. I just wasn't getting that. We don't have Vel's emotional. She doesn't have time to deal with her thing. We don't know really what happens with Gorman at least another year later. Willman is a whole nother issue that we don't get in this episode.
He's just gone from this
gone,
episode.
And so that is, you can tell it's gone from that storyline here. There's just so much that I feel like it is the weakest arc. However, this is the best episode of the weakest arc. So
Yes.
that's one thing I'll say. One thing I liked about this episode, however, of course, it would be in the worst arc of the entire show. I want everyone to know this is a real lesbian kiss. This is what real lesbian two women look like when they're kissing, not whatever Rise of Skywalker was. This is a real lesbian kiss. Okay.
So this one you can't miss the first time you see the movie in the theaters.
Exactly. Like if you're not even paying attention, you'll miss that one. This one, they are making out, they are reuniting, they are in love with each other. Like this is true passion. This isn't, oh, I'm super excited, I'm just kissing someone. This is clearly two people in a relationship. Like
It's
there's
in the
you
background so
cannot
we can cut it out in China.
exactly. You cannot do that here. This is part of the story. This is part of their arcs. This is part of the characters. This is a real lesbian kiss, and it was the best part about the episode, honestly. And
And it
I
should have
that's
happened
weird.
back in season one, but we will talk about that.
That too. Also, I love how me as a homosexual gay man, I'm saying the lesbian kiss was my favorite thing, which because obviously it's not my favorite thing in real life. So,
But we
but
stand in solidarity.
during
We
Pride
stand in
Month, we definitely
solidarity
do. Yes.
with our lesbian sisters. Yes. We're sticking with breaking it up between the characters. So which arc are we doing first, Bradley?
Yeah. So this
Where do I
one's
have to
okay.
scroll in my note?
This is kind of where it's going to get a little complicated. So
Oh,
I just want to let you know ahead of time. It is getting slightly more complicated. So certain people are kind of jumping here. I tried my best to keep it in order that we're seeing it on screen as best I can. But because of the way this episode is structured with the heist happening simultaneously with the party, the ISB kind of monitoring that, it's all kind of like a little jumbled. So just be prepared for that. But for the most part, I think I did a good job. The first one is going to be about Cathian and Cathian.
Cathian,
Cathian.
Cathian Kennedy.
Cathian Kennedy and her trip with Luthen. No, Cassian and Luthen and Bix just kind of dealing with that whole kind of dynamic. Section 1. Cassian meets Luthen aboard the Fondor Hallcraft where he advises Luthen to avoid Gorman, saying the rebels are unprepared. Luthen sees potential, but Cassian refuses to get involved. On Coruscant, Clea speaks with Luthen over comms, who inform her that Cassian's mission to Gorman failed. In code, he requests a second shipment, which she confirms is already en route to Gorman. In Palmo Plaza, Vel meets Dylan of the front, giving the signature code phrase, I have friends everywhere. Later, Cassian arrives at the safe house where he reunites with Bix. She reveals that Luthen visited her while Cassian was gone. He expresses frustration over Luthen's secrecy, and that night, Cassian confronts Luthen at his antiquities gallery, angry about his secret visit with Bix.
Wow, there's actually a bunch of my notes that are together for this one. I don't really have to skip around as much.
I tried.
Steer Guard, we remember from season one, is where Cassian stole the Starpath unit that kicks this
Oh,
whole thing off.
okay.
So
I,
we're actually seeing it on screen now.
okay, it looked a little like
Corellia?
Corellia. Yeah, I was like a little like, is this the same planet? Because it looks the same, but I love that.
They put it on the screen. It's Steer
It's a
Guard.
different one. Yeah, it's a different
Well,
list. Yeah.
I remember when the first trailer for The Force Awakens came out, and everybody thought that the desert planet was Tatooine. Because if there was going to be a desert planet, it was going to be Tatooine because that's just kind of how Star Wars did things.
There's only
If you
one
want an ice
desert
planet,
planet.
if you want an ice planet, it's probably going to be Hoth.
Yep.
If you want a desert planet, it's probably going to be Tatooine. If you want a pretty planet, it's going to be Naboo. It's just you're going to use the same planet for everything. And surprise, no, there can be another desert planet called Jakku, but it's the same thing. It's you're going to have multiple biomes across planets. I love the classic reversal of the ramp shot. So most of the times we're used to seeing the ramp opening from the exterior of a ship. This time we're seeing it open from the interior. I also love that the Gorman immediately called to bitch about Cassie. Like he was flying to Steerguard to meet Luthen, and they had already called Luthen to complain about him.
And that's why he's so active about them. He's like, wait a minute, they're clearly ready to go. What do you mean this is not working out? Like they called me just a second ago.
Well, here's the thing, right? Because as Luthen points out, and as this is horrifyingly revealed over the course of the scene, literally anything the Gormans do, Luthen benefits. They
Right.
just have to do something.
Right.
And what Cassian is advising them to do is nothing, which is the exact one thing that Luthen doesn't want them to do. If they
Yeah.
win, that's a rallying point for the galaxy against the Empire. If they lose and get exterminated, That's also a rallying point against the Empire. And when Cassian learns this, he's fucking horrified.
He doesn't love it, especially when what is Luthen's line? And what if they burn? And he says they'll burn brightly.
Yep.
Oh gosh.
Well, because Luthen points out to Cassian, he's like, you need to think like a leader. This is what thinking like a leader looks like. No, dude. Like, you're talking about straight sacrificing an entire planet as a political statement. That's fucked up, man.
I was gonna say this is what an ad agency thinks like.
Yeah.
Like, they're like,
Luth-
what's the best way to advertise this?
hmm. How can we maximize our profits?
That's right. And that's kind of what Luthen is thinking. He wants the best on his investment, which is the return on his investment is if they fail, it's gonna look really good.
Well, so one thing that's not really brought up in stories about revolution or stories about any sort of revolutionary movement, whether it is a, militaristic resistance, such as we normally see in Star Wars, whether it is a, nonviolent revolutionary movement, whether it's like just a rights movement. Like there's a case in the civil rights movement specifically. I haven't looked up all the details, so I'm not going to present it yet, but there is a specific case where the civil rights leaders, the 1960s, they had an opportunity to potentially do the bus boycott early. And because somebody else had been kicked off the bus, it was or moved to the back of the bus. Like I said, I have to look this up because there's a specific point I want to talk about. But because the person who had been like moved to the back of the bus was an unwed mother, they decided not to go for it.
Right, because the
And they
optics
went
look
with
bad, yeah.
Rosa Parks because the optics were better.
Right.
And this is something with revolution and controlling it, optics are a big deal. And for Luthen, the optics of either Gorman successfully like winning against the Empire or Gorman being massacred, the optics of that are so good for him
Right.
and what he wants because Gorman is this core world, human centric planet. And that's really important for the types of people that they want to get on board.
Right.
Like the Empire wiping out a bunch of gross bug people in the Outer Rim, nobody's going to care about that.
Don't care.
Human-centric planet in the age of Compnor, that's going to be a big deal. And Luthen
Right.
knows that, and it is horrifying. He is also right. Not right to do it, but he is correct in the
Right.
fact that this will cause a major, major deal if it happens one way. And that's part of the horror of Luthen's character. I love that Clea answers phones like I do. When she picks it up and she's like, what?
Well, I think only like one person is calling them usually, so I feel like
That's how I answer the phone when someone calls me at work, because you
yeah.
should not be allowed to call me.
Unless that's like her, like she knows for a fact that
She knows
beeping or whatever
she
is
knows that's
Luthen.
Luthen.
Right, exactly. So then she's
No
just
one else
like,
has a
ugh.
direct line to her like that. And they're even
Right.
speaking in code. Like,
I know. I thought that was so interesting too, that when they were like complete, like they just never are not working.
they're always on.
They're always on. I love that.
Yeah, and that'll be important to Clea in the final arc that
Mhm.
she's been running basically nonstop for the past 10 years.
So them talking about this code and sending Vel to Gorman is very interesting because clearly Luthen had already pre-decided. So I'm confused as to why even bother sending Cassian to check on them or whatever, because he's already clearly decided that he wants this to happen. So that's why he sent Vel.
Yeah, it's a little weird because Vel mentions a couple of times like that she told like Luthen that she would only take the job if Cinta was on the job with her, but then
Right.
Clea says in her scene that she was actually the one that sent Vel
Right.
there. Like, so I think Clea did this. I think Clea did this without Luthen.
You think she preemptively
I
just
think
said,
Clea
yeah.
preemptively, once Clea heard that Cassian was on his way back,
Right.
because the Gormans wouldn't have called the Fondor. They would have called Clea.
Right. Through the radio that they gave them or
They
whatever.
would have called Clea
The
through the
special
radio at the
crystal
shop.
code or whatever, yeah.
She would have sent Luthen, or they contacted the shop. Luthen went to go pick up Cassian, and while he was gone, Clea made the decision to send Vel in.
I guess because in the last episode he did give them the special crystal for the radio or whatever,
Yeah,
and
so
so yeah,
you can call again.
right. And then they literally immediately called. So I guess that's literally the only reason Cassian went was to give them this special crystal thing. Like I don't
Well,
really know any other reason.
he did go to like scope it out. Like he genuinely
Sure.
was there. But I think Luthen was hoping Cassian would do what Vel is doing, where he would
Right, which
advise
is
them.
prepare them and mobilize them. Yeah.
And Cassian shows up and it's like, all these people are stupid and I want nothing to
He's
do with
like,
them.
no thanks.
No, thank you. I am not interested in this.
But that's why I like Vel so much because she doesn't necessarily, she's more of like so that's why I like the dynamic between them because when he said that Cassian was thinking more like a soldier, not a leader, Vel is kind of doing both in a weird way. Like, so she's following the orders no matter what. Like, she's like, I don't care. Like, I think later on, and this is fun to talk about now because it's not that important, but she says, like, if we want to, get out of here, we can. If this doesn't seem right, we'll just leave. Like, fuck this. Like, so I don't know. It's just really the dynamic between the two differences between them is interesting.
My next note, which was written when Cassian returns to the apartment, is wow, they are really going at it.
I mean, he hasn't been gone that long. I mean,
You know what? Good for them. I do like that Bix is masking
hmm.
her chemical use and her depression and all of that by hyper cleaning the apartment before
Yeah, she's like,
Cassian gets
everything's
home.
great. Yeah.
It's like everything's great.
It's like you've
I also,
cleaned, you decorated, it looks
well,
nice.
everything looks fine until she tells him that Luthen stopped by.
Right.
And then he gets pissed because one of Cassian's big things this arc is he like really wants to make sure Bix is okay. He's
Right.
overprotective of Bix. And he also like doesn't trust Luthen. So this is part of why he's gonna say some of the things he's gonna say in the next arc. And also why he's gonna like not really want to deal with Luthen again after the next arc is I think part of this because he keeps seeing like Luthen will go behind his back. Luthen will do whatever Luthen thinks Luthen needs to do to win. And then he just runs off to the shop, which Cassian is not usually this stupid.
Right.
And I do like the show points out that he's not usually this stupid. There is a trope. Tropes are not bad, by the way. When I bring up tropes in this context, it is not an indictment of the scene. Tropes in and of themselves are not bad. Building your story like consciously out of tropes with nothing, like doing nothing with them, like building a house of bricks without putting any mortar in there is bad, but that's not what the show is doing. There is a trope called OOC is serious business. And what that means is out of character is serious business. And that is when a character does something that is outside of what their character would normally do. And it is used to communicate that something very bad is happening or they are in a very intense emotional place. That's what's happening here is Cassian would never fucking show up at Luthen's shop. And I also love in this sequence that it really drives home Cassian is refusing to adapt. And that's his main issue. Cassian can't compromise when it comes to Bix, and he's not compromising in general. He does not work with the Ghormans because he comes in and says, fuck you guys, you don't know what you're on about. And they're like, well, fuck you too, buddy. And so that breaks down because he can't compromise. Then he won't compromise in regards to Bix, which is an interesting arc for his character to take, given where we know he's going to end up.
Section 2. At the Palmo Calf House, Vel meets with her contact, which turns out to be Cinta. She debriefs that the Gorman front has chosen a simple mission plan, but they will back out if the plan is doomed. Both reveal they joined the mission because of each other. Meanwhile, on Coruscant, Dedra reports to Partagaz about the situation on Gorman. He cautions Dedra that she's treading a fine line with this operation and insists that Cyril must remain unaware of the real mission details. Back in Palmo, Vel and Cinta lead a strategy meeting with the Gorman front. She insists that only she and Cinta can carry blasters during the raid. She emphasizes obedience and readiness, proposing to launch the raid the next night. Later in private, Vel tells Cinta they can walk away if the mission doesn't feel right. Cinta apologizes for her past decisions, and Vel and Cinta share a heartfelt embrace and kiss, reaffirming their bond.
Zavell did request Senta basically just to see her because this is the
Right?
only way they could.
Yeah.
And that's part of the tragedy of the story with them is that Vel talks about in the previous arc. She mentions like, oh, it works when it works, et cetera, et cetera. These two juxtaposed with Cassian and Bix are really interesting
Yeah.
because Cassian and Bix are always together and that's causing problems. Vel and Center are always apart and that's causing problems.
This is
I
just
do.
further proof that long distance relationships don't work and codependent relationships also don't work.
Yes, you should maybe see your partner once in a while, but you don't have to
Right.
see them all the time.
And you also don't want to work with them the only time you see them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I
Probably not a
would
great idea.
I would not recommend dating your coworkers. I've never done that because
Right.
I'm smart, but I've had
Especially if you're
friends do it.
committing
Especially if you're committing revolutionary crimes
revolutionary
against the
crimes, right?
fascist
Yeah.
government. Well, because one thing too is that Cinta mentions that she had an accident.
Okay, this is what I wanted to talk about because this is so I was so confused about this point, and I don't know if she's referring to Take Holma.
I am 90% sure what happened is she crashed the speeder.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I am 90% sure if we'd had more time with Vel and Cinta, we would have found
Yes.
out about this. But Cinta's barely fucking in this season,
Yes.
which is kind of a thing. It's an issue.
Hmm.
But I'm 90% sure she crashed the speeder, killed Tay. She was pretty badly injured because she had
Right,
to
because
sell it.
I think she said it was almost a year ago, or she said like a couple months ago, or you know what I mean? Like, so I feel
Yep.
like it is timeline wise, it does make sense. So it has to be that. I can't
Yeah.
think of anything
That's what
else
it
because,
is.
yeah, otherwise it would have to be this random mission that we don't know anything about, and they'll have to make a comic book about sometime, and then we'll have to, you know,
I'm sure we'll get a comic or a
the
novel
murder
or
of Take Home.
something. Yeah, about Take Home. We'll get when we get the Andor from a certain point of view, we'll get Take Home's point of view as he's fucking
Ooh.
dying.
Or I could also see them doing comics to fill in the gaps of the years. Like the
I could also see that.
because how
Yeah.
Tony was like, I want to do all this other stuff, but you can't do that timeline like in TV. But it would be very interesting to do in between comic book runs if you just do them in between the years and just do however many stories you want to tell in between each episode and then go for it like
They've
that.
done that with the original trilogy. They had
I'm just
comic runs talking
saying.
about everything that happened between 4 and 5 and then 5 and 6. I want to read something from the Star Wars trivia guide for Andor Week 2 because this is the first time we're seeing the ISB operations room.
Okay.
And I found this interesting. Quote, the ISB's operations room was shot in the OKX Thought Leadership Center within the McLaren Group's Technology Center in Woking, England, the same complex where Coruscant's transportation hub was filmed for Andor Season 1. So I've actually seen the visual effects overlays where they'll show you the original shot and they'll show you the
Oh, okay.
overlay.
Yeah, yeah.
I've actually seen what this room actually looks like in real life, and then how they redressed it for Andor, which is very cool.
I think a fun like thing if you're really into traveling, and if I ever get the chance to do this, I would do this, but I would print out screenshots of the episode and I would take them to these places and I would hold them up and take pictures and try to match it up visually like with the thing that we're seeing. I think that'd be so much fun, especially if like I ever went to like Valencia and
I
saw
would
like
love to go there now.
just so I could do like all the Coruscant shots. Oh, it would be amazing.
My next note is, oop, Dedra is doing something secret that Cyril doesn't know.
Yeah, I think we saw this
Ooh.
coming a million miles away.
We know. We know she's running the Exterminate the Gormans playbook
Right,
that was
exactly.
come up with in the Mouthing Divide back in episode 1.
I do find it interesting that each of these arcs is setting up the third arc. Like I like how like so they've placed
Everything's
that
building
in it.
up
Yeah, it's
to the
really
third
great.
arc.
It really is that third arc is so important to the show. I feel like it's the honestly it's the crux of the show. Like it's like the true. I mean, yes, other things happen in the climaxes and stuff like that, but I feel like the third arc is that kind of first dip of the roller coaster. Like it's like, okay, we have to go to the very top, and then it's like we still have a few more to do, but this
We're
is
gonna
the main
come
one.
down, but we're sort of sliding down into Rogue One at that point. I would say
Right.
episode 9 is the end of the main arc of Andor the show.
I think I agree with you.
Like as its own entity, it's pretty much done after episode 9.
Right. And then it
Episodes
sets up
10,
the
11,
rest.
and
Yeah.
12. And yeah, episodes 10, 11, and 12 really more lead into Rogue One, especially episodes 11 and 12.
Oh yeah, there you can see them laying the groundwork for like, oh, they're gonna start bringing up Rogue One stuff in a second.
The
Like,
first
yeah,
time I watched the last 3 episodes, I immediately put on Rogue One and watched it.
yeah.
And it works really well.
Hmm, cool.
It definitely recontextualizes some scenes, put it that way. One interesting flaw in the gore we see in the scene where with Vel and Cinta trying to talk them through the heist. One interesting flaw with them is that they are too independent to follow orders.
Right.
I think this is also why Cassian Collective is don't get involved and don't wind them into the larger rebellion because they don't really care about anybody outside of themselves. They're very selfish,
Yes. And that's
which
very apparent, obviously.
yeah, they only care about Gorman, and they anytime somebody else comes in and tries to like tell them things which make sense, if it's not coming from them, they're not interested in hearing it. And this is ultimately going to be their downfall.
Right, because I think I forget her name. Is it Tazi? No, that's a guy. Lisa? Nope, that's another woman. This is the problem with the Gormans. There are
Drina?
so many.
Is it
Let's see.
Drina?
Drina,
Drina
yes,
and
okay.
Inza are the two main women.
Okay, yes. So
Drin's,
Drina is
Drina
the
is
one.
blonde.
Yes,
Yes.
because she'll be more important, I think, in the next arc. But
Yes.
she is in this arc, she's introduced. She has a problem. Well, she's actually an important part of this episode, but she is the first person to bring up the fact that I don't take orders from you, basically, or why should I take orders from you? Because just because you're here, like, and she's like, we need to be working with ourselves and following our own, our own rules. But then Vel basically tells her, like, if you don't like this shit, get out. Like, or she's
Mhm.
speaking to everybody, mostly I think Sam and Andrina, but who are kind of the more we'll call them rebellious of the
Yeah,
group.
they're
Yeah,
definitely the more Carol Rylands, I think, is the one who most understands like
yeah,
why the orders are in place, what
exactly.
they're there for, and that's going to be interesting, when we get into episode 8 because he is desperately trying to hold on to control of this situation. And it's already starting to slip out of his control.
Right.
Like we can already tell people are starting to not listen to him. And that's part of the thing too is I think the Gormans had this sense of community, the Gore rather, had this sense of community and togetherness. And part of the problem with that is when outside experts come in and start telling them what to do, they chafe at that
Right.
because there was always this unspoken Carol Rylands kind of seemed like the leader, but they were all sort of in this together. And now they don't know how to adapt to a much more direct chain of command. So this is following the heist rules, and this is going to be a question.
I was gonna bring it up. I was gonna say.
We see them intercut with them sort of scoping out the place, watching the trucks move as they explain what the plan is going to be. And notice the plan pretty much goes off the rails when they stop showing it to us. Like, it seems like for a minute it might actually break the heist rules. This is a thing the heist rules can sometimes do,
Right.
is they can push it a little bit further because once they've stopped showing it, it's like, okay, but where is this going to go wrong? Because it clearly is. But they also do have some elements of the plan that are not being included in this meeting.
Mm.
So yes, this does follow the heist rules enough to be comfortable.
Okay.
They are I love the Vel and Cinta scene. They are absolutely fucking speedrunning this.
I know.
And
It would have
here
been
is where
so
I
beautiful.
think the show suffers the most for it because it's
Yeah.
so beautiful
Yeah.
because they have to cram it all into one scene.
I know.
They got
Because
one,
one
but
moment,
it's great. They get one moment, they kiss, they're gonna get together, the death flags are being waved. And
they
here's
forgive each other. Everything's good. Their relationship is
uh-huh,
now
uh-huh.
mended and everything. And
Yeah. Yikes. Anyway, they do kiss, which is the thing Bradley liked, which is awesome. I love when shows explicitly show their queer characters on
right.
screen being queer. This needed to be in season 1. And I do think that what happens later in the episode, I think hits worse because it took them this long.
Yeah.
I think in large part because part of the thing with what happens later is I guess we'll talk about it when we talk about it.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what? I'll
Yeah.
say that. We'll talk
Yeah.
about it
You
when we'll
can save
talk
this
about it.
discussion for the next thing. Yeah.
But I do think that it is to the detriment of how the show is written and the detriment of how it's handled by the presumably straight, we don't necessarily know, men that are writing the show. Is
That is
that
true.
it took the queer characters this long to explicitly kiss on screen,
Yeah.
and then what happens in this episode happens. And that, no matter what way you slice it, feels bad.
And I think that's because again, I don't want to assume, but it leads me to believe that all the writers are straight because, you know what I mean?
I would believe that. I would
I have a
believe that
sneaky
they are.
suspicion because you
I
don't
don't
just,
want to make
yeah,
judgments about them
sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
without knowing about them because
Especially
we
during
live in
Pride
such a
Month.
culture. Well, here's the thing, right? I live in writer space, queer writer
Sure.
spaces because hello, I write queer books.
Right. Right. Right.
and I interact with those spaces a lot. There is a very unfortunate trend online of policing sexuality. The internet does this thing with perfectly reasonable concepts, like, hey, we should be platforming out queer voices. Like, that is a cool thing. And twisting it around to say, unless you are out, you should not be writing this content. And I think that's a very harmful way to look at writing media. I do think if you are writing outside of your lived experience, you have to be very careful and you have to involve people in the process to make sure that you're handling things in a good way, which I think this show didn't.
Right.
I think that's part of the thing. But I also don't want to participate in, and I don't even want to remotely come close to encourage actively policing writers of like, if you're not willing to come out and talk about like your brother is gay or you are gay or whatever your own personal experience is, that you shouldn't be allowed to, because I think that's harmful and toxic. And there have been writers and actors that have been forced to come out because the internet yelled at them a lot. And that's not fun and that's not cool. However, I would hazard a very strong guess that these are probably straight people. And I can
Yeah.
kind of tell from the way this is written that they didn't really think about this when they wrote it this way. And I also think it's entirely possible to give Tony Gilroy a little bit of credit here. It is also entirely possible that he was saving them
I would
for a
go
later
I would go
season.
far to say that. Yeah, that's probably true. I mean,
That's
because
also a
yeah,
distinct possibility that maybe he didn't make them kiss in season one so that he could do it in season two, and then Cinta would die.
right.
Because
And it would have
according
been
to
a
Tony
nice,
Gilroy, that was always
arc.
the
Yeah.
plan. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think that would have been a nice arc to have. Well, because and then we would have had more time with their relationship and then more of the
Yeah. We don't
struggles
really
that they're
get.
facing between each other, being apart from each other slash trying to be with each other. There's so many things they could have done, but we are strapped for time, so I don't want to be too hard on him, but I didn't see any lesbian in the writing room, honestly. Like that's what I'm getting from this.
I think we've been through all the writers, and I think they're all
Yeah.
men.
Yeah. So,
I'm pretty sure all of the people who wrote on the show were men, which, I have not heard anything
yeah.
about the show. As a gay man, I didn't see anything in the show that I was like, I find this particularly problematic. And I haven't heard from anybody else in the
Right.
other groups that have really like mentioned anything too glaring. So they did an okay job from what I understand. Other people will definitely have different opinions from me.
Section 3. While riding in their airspeeder, Perrin reviews a list of senators with Mon. He complains about the overwhelming number of political banquets, and later in the Imperial Senate, an alien oathkeeper delivers a pro-Empire chant to a cheering crowd. Mon uncomfortably engages, then quickly leaves. Meanwhile, Luthen and Clea leave for a party. Mon and Perrin arrive for Davo Sculdun's investiture banquet, where they briefly interact with Bail Organa. Once inside, they greet the Sculdens and they lead them through the crowded event. During the party, Luthen schmoozes with guests, Clea talks with Mishko, and Lonnie, Hart, and Legret drink together. Luthen talks with Mon, where she expresses concern about not hearing from Vel, and Clea pretends to flirt with Lonnie, steering him away from the party. In Davo's exhibit, director Orson Krennic is introduced to Mon. Krennic and is flanked by Imperial officers and exchanges tense pleasantries with her. Davo presents his prized artifacts, and meanwhile, Clea covertly enlists Lonnie to help her retrieve a listening device. Mon and Krennic engage in sharp ideological exchange, with Mon criticizing a massacre and Krennic defending it with brutal rhetoric. Later, Luthen and Clea leave the party, pleased that she successfully removed the listening device without detection, and Luthen jokes about killing Krennic.
All right, let's dive into all of my notes for this section.
I knew
So,
this was going to be your biggest section, so I was like, let's get this out of the way.
I love that Perrin is stressed out by the amount of parties
Hmm.
because we don't often see Perrin stressed.
Yeah, he said something like 80 plus parties that they have, or new senators, so there's like 80 plus parties that they have to go to.
So here's part of the interesting thing they've kind of done in the background with Perrin in this season. The parties aren't fun anymore. The parties are stressful. And part of it is because the new senators, they make a point when they're having this conversation in the cab that Mon was sworn in and it took her several years before she hosted her own banquet.
Right.
These new senators are doing it immediately. And what it is the new senators, because the power of the Senate is weakening, And also because the Empire is deliberately maneuvering people who are not really interested in governing into the Senate. The new senators are more interested in partying and being seen as wealthy and prominent than they are actually doing their fucking job.
Which leads very nicely into The Mandalorian season 3 when
Mhm.
all the senators are like, what's the difference between the Empire and the New Republic? Who cares?
In
Like,
the
we're still having
weirdly
parties.
good episode of The Mandalorian season 3. Yeah.
I call that like the proto Andor episode. It's like a very like it's just a very interesting how I feel like they need to do more New Republic politics stuff. I feel like that could get really interesting if they did that, but
This scene in the Senate, I want to give a little bit of trivia first from the StarWars.com trivia guide, and then I'll dive into it.
okay.
Quote, Emperor Palpatine's podium in the Imperial Senate, referred to as the taco shell by the art department, was recreated for Andor season 2, end quote.
Love that.
So I believe they actually built that.
I love how it's called a taco shell.
It is the taco shell.
That's hilarious.
This scene is creepy as hell.
Oh, it's very,
It's very disturbing.
very
And
culty. Like,
here's the most disturbing thing about it.
yeah.
I've seen unironic Empire fan cam on TikTok using the audio from this scene.
Okay.
I'm going to hold your hand delicately, people
Yikes.
on TikTok, when I say this. You have colossally missed the point of this scene. If you
Uh,
listened to this audio and thought, damn, go Empire, that's really strong and cool, you have missed the point of this scene.
I love that Mon is so uncomfortable saying it. She's just kind of like mouthing. I mean, she's still saying it because I think it is they're recording them or something, and that's why she's actually saying
She
it. So,
stops halfway through. She
okay,
starts, and then we get the amazing close-up shot of her hand just like clawing onto the podium.
right.
One thing I do want to note, when Mon stopped speaking, did you notice Erskine also stopped speaking?
Okay.
He was giving the same loyalty pledge, and when she stopped, he stopped because he's more loyal to her than
To
he is
her.
to the Senate,
Right. I love that.
which I thought was a nice touch.
No, I love his character. I love that he is that loyal to her. So,
I also love that he's here, just sort of reminding us that he's here, given how important he's going to be to the next arc.
right.
It's just sort of reminding us, yes, Erskine is here. This scene is really uncomfortable. The Oathkeeper is really freaky, and I need to move on to the new Bail Organa.
I was gonna say I will do what Tony Gilroy did, and I will because in an interview he said I wanted to introduce the new Bail Organa very quickly in this episode because it's not as important to get people used to the idea that it's a new person, and then in the next arc he'll be more important. So in that respect, I will not be covering him as an actor until the next episode.
The internet has this bad habit of lighting itself on fire anytime a thing is in the process of coming out
Right.
because it assumes it has already figured out where the rest of the thing is going.
Mm,
And in this case, I remember people getting very, very mad that they recast Bail Organa because they saw this scene
right.
and went, why did you bother to recast him if he's just going to be a cameo? And I'm like, there's 6 more episodes. Maybe shut the fuck up and watch them. I'm
He
assuming
literally explains it in
I'm
the next episode.
assuming
Yeah.
if you have brain cells and you're watching this, you can tell that the Gorman massacre and the flight from the Senate is coming. I'm sorry, but if you're steeped enough in Star Wars lore to be whining about the recasting of Bail Organa, you should be smart enough to have figured out the Gorman massacre is coming and also that Yavin is coming. And both of those things are going to need to involve Bail Organa. Chances are good he's going to show up again, which of course
Right.
I was vindicated the next week when he had a very big role in episode 9.
And it's also like the original actress who's playing Mon Mothma isn't playing Mon Mothma in this show. So why are you mad about
No,
one other
Carolyn
character?
Blankston is not playing Mon Mothma.
You know what I mean?
We should be allowed to recast if things just don't work out. The idea that we need to write around a particular character because we can't get an actor, or the idea that we need to write around, write a character off, or that we need to use some horrible AI thing for Luke Skywalker's face when you have a perfectly good Luke Skywalker right there.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. And honestly, one of the things I'm most excited for in the Ahsoka show is the recasting of Baylan Skoll. Now, I'm not happy that they had to do it.
Right.
That was tragic, and that fucking sucks. I love that they made the decision to do it, and I love that they made the decision to recast Bail Organa because they couldn't get Jimmy Smith. Because that shows that they're starting to move back in the right direction.
Right.
Because these characters should be timeless. because this character should be somebody that other actors should be allowed to embody. We should be okay with different people portraying the same character. Audiences are smarter than you think. We can get over.
Yeah, and I can see like a slight disconnect if you watch, everything in order and you're going like
It
this
is a
and
little
then Rogue
jarring to
One.
go
I
from
get it.
episode 12 to Rogue One.
I
I
get it.
promise you get over it very quickly.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, I think you can just he's not the most important character in the show. He's not the most important character in the movie. He's not even the most important character in any of the movies. So I think it's okay. Like I think you guys will be
Genevieve
fine.
O'Reilly,
Yeah.
Diego Luna, and the actor who's playing Melshi, whose name I forget, are all also the guy who's playing the people who are playing the other senators in episode 12 when they show all five of these people are very visibly younger in Rogue One than they are in this season. I promise you that's more jarring.
Yeah.
Like watching everyone de-age
You'll
in
be
5 minutes is
Yeah,
more jarring than recasting this actor.
I agree.
It'll be okay. We can keep recasting people. It's fine. That was not the problem with Solo.
Right.
I think one very big missed opportunity in the rest of these episodes, and it shows here a little bit, and it's going to really show in episode 9. We don't see Lita.
Mm,
We get an offhand mention that, oh, you
right.
should totally see the kids now that you're
Right. They just
back,
got
or now
back.
that
Yeah.
they're back. The kids just got back from their honeymoon. We're not going to see them, and this is the last time Lita's going to be ever mentioned in the show.
That is kind of a loss in the cut, like on the cutting room floor. I feel like the reunion of Mon and Lita post wedding,
Right. And I
because
do
that's a
think
different
that
dynamic than the other
we'll
dynamic we'll
get
get
to it.
later
We'll
on.
get
Yeah.
to it when we get to it. But the lack of Mon, the phasing out of Mon's family, is honestly, I said previously, episode 9 was a 10 out of 10. It's a 9.9 repeating at it.
Mm,
There's one thing that I think that episode really just completely misses the mark on, and that is we never get to see the impact of what happens on Lita, and we never get to see the impact on Perrin after they were so important to her character throughout this and the entirety of this show up to this point.
right. Because if you had not built them up, I think if they had just been background extras or whatever, like in the first season, something that we didn't really care too much about, I wouldn't be as jarred from the experience as I am. I feel like we wouldn't really care because they wouldn't have been that important. Because if we would only shown Mon, we really wouldn't have paid attention, then it wouldn't have been that big a deal. The fact that they've spent so much time on the dynamics between the three of them, like I feel like it is a missed opportunity. Well, I'm sure they wanted to do it. It's not like they didn't
Well,
want to, but
we'll talk about that. There was a scene like that was supposed to be in episode 9. We will kind of talk about it.
okay.
But preview for my opinion of episode 9 and also something that happens in episode 12. It is very nice that we get acknowledgement from writers that there were supposed to be certain scenes that were supposed to do
Right.
things. Those scenes are not in the show. They are not in the piece of media. And one of the things with media like analysis is you have to take it as it is presented to us. You have to take it on its own merits, what is in the text. And that's something that I will definitely be talking about, particularly with episode 12 and a particular shot. We have to go with what's in the text rather than what we wish were in the text or what someone said they wanted to be in the. I love that Luthen is so good at being charming and likable. And I like that we keep seeing examples of him being able to fake this.
My favorite part of the schmoozing that he does is where they're like, that ring is really expensive. Aren't you scared that you wore it out here? And he's like, I was hoping one of you bastards would fucking pay for, like, offer me money for
I
it.
love this guy. I love that he insults them to their faces.
Yeah, and they love it.
They love it. They eat it up because he's so charming.
He really is. And I wonder where he learned this too, because that's the other thing is like, I don't want to talk too much about the last arc, but there is like, he's a different person in the last arc that we see in a couple of flashbacks. And so I feel like, where does he learn this like charisma, like suaveness that he has? It's totally a different character. And I want to know more about where that comes from.
There's so much about Luthen that we never find out, and I think we find out enough to understand him. But there's definitely aspects of him that I would have liked to have more of,
Right.
just to explain, like, because he's such an interesting new character. He's a character that we've never really had in Star Wars before. He's a new character, and he's such an important character to the broad overarching arc of Star Wars. And there's things we don't learn about him. And I think those are missed opportunities. One person who isn't missing an opportunity is Hurt, who's just getting absolutely smashed.
He's actually my favorite part about the party because he knows that they just got these tickets because Party Guys is busy. And so they were like, fuck it. Let's just drink. Like, when do we ever get to cut loose like this and go wild at the party? And I
Mm-hmm.
love that they're all in on it too. They're all like, hell yeah, let's drink together. Like,
Because they're a bunch of bureaucrats
yeah,
just sitting around drinking. I love it. I also love that Mon like very genuinely loves her cousin and like is concerned about her.
right,
When she asks about Vel, she talks about how like, oh, I genuinely like care about my cousin. And I think particularly with the final arc, episodes 11 and 12, that is something we're seeing throughout this season is reinforcing that Mon and Vel love each other
right.
a lot. Then she calls Luthen her history teacher. And I'm like, girl, you probably know as much as he does.
At this point, yeah,
Don't play down. Like, you were a history nerd.
right. Yeah, I wonder if she does know more than him, honestly, because now that I think about it, like he only knows this stuff as a cover, right? Like for the most part. So I feel
He
like,
knows it specifically within the context of artifacts, but she's kind of dumbing herself down
right.
to make herself not seem as smart as she is, which has
Mm,
kind of been her whole MO, is she sort
right.
of plays down how smart and how good at things she actually is. Somebody who's not playing down how good she actually is Clea,
Yes.
who is iconic from the moment she steps in to this party. Everything she does is a slay. This is her episode.
She is always amazing. I'm never gonna not gonna give her praise because she became essentially my favorite character of the show.
Oh, she's incredible by the end of the show. She immediately rolls up on Lonnie and is like, "Hi, we're flirting. Come with me. We're gonna do crimes." And I'm like, "I love you so much, so much."
I also love that Lonnie is both, I think he's both afraid, obviously, to blow his cover, but I think he also genuinely loves his family and his wife, so he doesn't want to be like fake flirting in front of his
I think
coworkers.
he's scared of Clea. I think he
Yeah.
actually is kind of scared of Clea.
Oh, he definitely is.
Like, and speaking of people who are scary, I'm just segueing from one point to another today.
It
Like, I'm
jumps,
just doing
so
the
keep
ball.
going. Yeah.
The ball is being kicked down the court. Krennic is here,
Oh, yep. Came to the party.
and that's a thing.
I like how everybody came to the party.
I do like that. I do like
Pretty
how
much everyone's at this
everybody
party.
came. And he and Mon are immediately sniping at each other in some of the pettiest, bitchiest shade throwing I have ever seen
Oh,
in a Star Wars.
masterclass in shade.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm not even going to quote it. It's just so iconic.
It's too good. Krennic is that bitch, and I love
He
him for it.
truly is that bitch at all times. Perrin has to fucking intervene. Perrin has to like slide himself in the middle and be like, "So let's move on.
Right, like this is getting intense. Like, yeah.
Let's go." I do have to say here, this is going to cut back and forth between this and the heist.
Right.
I have a note here that the back 15 minutes of this episode is the most tense I have ever felt watching a Star Wars before episode 8.
Okay.
Every time I watch this, even knowing what happens, I am on the edge of my seat.
It's intercut beautifully. There's only so much you can put. Like, if I were to try to combine these two and actually cover it like we normally would, it would be so confusing because it would be like they get the weapons, then so and so is flirting with so and so at the party. Like that, it would just cut back and forth. But in the context of the edit, it actually works really well because it is the heist is rising as we go through the scene, and then the tension with Clea trying to get the listening device is also rising through the party. So it's such a great dynamic of the two.
I think the way it works is that neither of them feels like the tension is coming to a halt. The tension for both is rising in equal measure.
Right.
So we are feeling tense rather than going back and forth between being extra tense about one thing and not really that tense about another thing. The tension is turning into like this feedback loop of tension to where we're
Right.
tense about whatever thing we happen to be seeing. And then we're reminded we have another thing to be anxious about. And then we go back to being anxious about the first thing. And it's back and forth and back and forth and back and forth the whole time.
Right. Because yeah,
It's
one of them
it's
has to go
crazy. It's
wrong,
so
right?
good.
Like that's like
One of
what
them
it's
has to go
basically
wrong.
showing us. Yeah.
Yes. Krennic mentions having attended the ISB Academy. Obviously, this is minor dating inconsistency. However, Again, I do think this is a matter of changing history within the context of
Right.
the Empire. That
Hmm.
he's not going to describe a Republic military academy. He's going to call it ISB Academy. He's drinking the Kool-Aid. I think that explains that well enough that I'm fine. Because oh Lord, it's turned into a political debate.
And
I
everybody in the room is uncomfortable.
Yeah. So I have some friends, and I also have some people close to me who I'm not going to name and shame and put on blast because those people are possibly listening to this episode. But I have some people that I love dearly who have a really bad habit of getting into political arguments at parties
I could
that
never.
I have to break up.
I
And
could
so
never
I
do that.
know Perrin's feelings very well in this scene. They're immediately at it. Mon and Krennic are back and forth, and Mon is like getting worked up. And
Yeah.
Krennic is having the best evening of his life.
Oh, he thinks it's great. He loves the spar. He loves
He
the
loves the
the
spar.
volleying.
He's the thing about director Krennic is that when you are lower than him on the totem pole, he is very intimidating. When you are equal to him or higher than him on the totem pole, he is an annoying, sniveling little bully man. And that's why it's also so interesting going from the back arc of Andor, where we're seeing him through Dedra and Leo Partagas,
Mm,
to how we view him in Rogue One, where everyone is shitting on him constantly.
right.
Because Tarkin is running circles around this guy. Vader has no time for him. It's hilarious, the juxtaposition. Clea's do as I say line, iconic. Equally iconic, and I literally wrote this line down because I thought it was the minute this happened in the episode, I
Hmm.
personally lost my shit. It's the line, words do still have meaning. I think we can all
Mm,
agree on that.
mm, mm,
I have literally said that.
mm, mm, mm,
I have literally said
mm.
that. I have a thermos that says words mean things on it. When Krennic said that, I was like, I'm going to gift the fuck out of this scene and I'm going to use it forever. And
It's
I
so
know the
good.
context is horrifying.
Yes.
I know the context is what he's arguing is horrible, but that quote is just
Oh, it's genius.
chef's kiss.
Yeah.
Because I'm also annoying. I'm also very annoying to people at parties.
Sure.
Particularly if you start trying to tell me that the Rise of Skywalker is bad, and then you cite that the dagger doesn't make sense. I will proceed to actually you into the sun. Did I ever tell the story? I don't remember if I've told the story on the
Yes, you have
podcast, but I know I've
multiple
told the
times.
story. No, not this one. Different one.
Oh.
The story where I'm at a party and I'm around the reception table and there's this man. And it is a man who I made some comment about like, oh, something something with the new Disney stuff. I was like, this is not as crazy as you would think. Star Wars is, always kind of crazy, something like that. And this man looks at me and goes, "Oh, I bet you've never read any of the old expanded universe books." I'm like, "Okay. Okay.
Oh, no,
Okay.
don't go down that
We're gonna
rabbit
play this
hole.
game. We're gonna play this game. You want to tell me that I haven't read any EU books? Okay, so I bide my time in this
Sure.
conversation. I don't jump down his throat immediately.
Right.
I wait, and then about 15 minutes later, he says something. I see my opportunity, and I bring up Callista, Callista's sort of complicated, but she's one of Luke's ex-girlfriends, and I name drop her specifically. And the guy looks at me like I'm crazy. And I turn to him and I go, "Well, I guess you've never read any of the old expanded universe books, huh?"
I can't. You and
I'm
Krennic are the
very
same.
annoying at part.
You and Krennic
Look,
are the
the
same.
time Luke fell in love with a spaceship is one of the first things I feel like people learn about the EU. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That is who I am as a person.
Hmm.
Don't condescend to me that I haven't read any of the old books. I promise I have.
Right.
My next note is holy shit, she's bleeding, which is
Uh,
that shot. Oh my god.
I thought they were gonna
Where
do
like
something
the
dramatic.
blood is dripping from her hand.
I thought it was gonna like drip on the floor and then like someone was gonna notice it randomly. Like,
Yeah, there's a little moment where Krennic like kind of bends down, like he almost looks like he's noticed it.
yeah, I was thinking that something was gonna happen where she dropped like there's a drop of blood and then like someone just for some reason is about to look down and then like Lonnie or something is like, oh, by the way, like, and then that's his opportunity to kind of
Yeah.
distract them more. But
Yeah, and I also do love that Perrin is like as they're walking up to the book, the disc that they're around, you can see Perrin in the background like calming Mon down,
it's like, don't worry about it. Don't.
which I think is great.
You're right. You're right. You're so right.
Yes. Uh And then finally, it is just really good to see Clay and Luthen actually relieved and laughing and joking with her. I really like their final shot.
They're always so tense, and then it's like a quick, like his last episode they were arguing, and then it's like now this
Mhm.
one they're like laughing, they're like having a good time and even joking. Like that's
Yeah,
such a
he's even
good little
joking
dynamic.
like we should have killed Krennic while we were up there.
Yeah, he's like, God damn it, we had a perfect
It's such dark humor, but she thinks it's hilarious.
right, because I think she also slightly kind of agrees with him, like in the sense
They,
that like, wait, maybe we should have actually killed
yeah,
him, you know?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's funny
They
because
have the
they know they
same
couldn't
dark
have,
humor,
but
which is
yeah,
very interesting to me.
I love that.
And that's it for the party.
All right, let's keep it moving then. Section 4. At ISB, Partagas and Dedra oversee the Gorman sting from a control center, while Cyril monitors the streets and confirms the operation is proceeding as planned. Vel, Cinta, and the Gorman rebels assume their positions. They disable an armored carrier, unloading weapon crates, sending them down the spillway tunnel to a speeder van below, while Cyril updates the ISB on their progress. During the mission, Drina helps an elderly woman away from the crash. The rebels realize Drina is missing, prompting Vel to leave her post to search for her. Sam confronts a civilian, Lizine, during the heist and accidentally shoots Cinta in the crossfire while trying to scare Lizine away. Cyril reports the shooting to Partagas and Dedra, prompting an order from Imperial reinforcements as emergency vehicles begin to respond. She confronts Sam in the escape vehicle, blaming him for Cinta's death and telling him he must carry the weight of it for the rest of his life.
There's a shot of the crate when they're loading it off the truck and they're like the camera follows it all the way from
All the way
one
down the
truck to
chute.
the other
Yep.
is a sick ass shot.
And I have to believe it's practical in some
It
capacity.
is absolutely practical. They built
Yeah.
this set.
Yeah. I love it.
They built this set, so that is absolutely a practical shot. It also does seem like Drina that's going to be the one that screws it up, which I do
Mm.
like as well. Because Cinta's like, oh, I think Drina should really be up top with us.
Yep.
I just got a feeling she should do this. So like they keep bringing her up, but nope, it is not going to be
No. And all she
Drina that
was
does
doing was
it.
helping some old lady from being involved in the whole
Yep,
entire situation.
yep. She gets out of this pretty scot free. Like,
Yeah.
and
Because
then
actually,
Lizine shows up.
well, I was gonna say at one point you see after everything happens, you see her come back with Drina. You see Vel and Drina come back together, and so I was like, oh, she clearly found her. Like, just too late, obviously. But
Right.
yeah,
It was also like even if Vel had been there, what could Vel
what
have
would she
done?
have done? Yeah, it doesn't really matter in the broader context, but
Yeah, what could she have done? Like even if she managed to see Sam, like it
mhm,
it probably wouldn't have gone well.
right.
It may not have gone exactly like this, but it's still going to escalate because Lizine is very quick to escalate the minute he turns up.
And a quick note about Lazine, I said I was gonna bring him up
Yeah,
because
you did
he's
save him for this episode
I did
because
save
he's
him
a
for this
little
episode,
more central to
right?
what happens in this one, even though he will show up again.
Yeah, he in the last episode we saw him, he just flipped off Caro in the Gorman way. This time he is more essential to the plot, but he is played by Thierry Goddard. He is also French,
Okay.
and I just keeping up with the all the Gormans are French
Gorman's
actors
French. Yep.
or European. So not a single thing he's done I could tell you or pronounce half of them because they are all French. Um, but yeah.
I could probably call my boyfriend in here. He might be around. He might be able to pronounce some of
You
these
might be able
names
to
for
pronounce
you.
some of these, but
I'm not going to do
I didn't
that. I'm
reckon him.
I'm never going to get him on a mic.
But anyway,
No.
yeah,
No.
so
I love him. That's not happening. Do you remember how in episode 3 I introduced this concept to where every arc there's like this one thing that's going to be really hard to talk about. This is that thing
okay.
of trying to parse out Cinta's death
Okay.
because there were a lot of very strong reactions to Cinta's death
Right.
when it happened. I think personally that multiple things can exist simultaneously.
Sure.
I think that the Cinta and Vel
That's their couple name. I'm just kidding.
needed to kiss prior to this episode because for reasons I'm about to get into, it feels bad
Yeah.
that the couple kissed for the first time on screen and then immediately died.
Right.
However, the term bury your gaze was thrown around a lot
Yep.
after this episode in ways that I found to be a problem.
Okay.
But I do understand and even agree with the underlying principle that it absolutely sucks as a queer person to watch a queer character die on screen.
Right.
That does suck. If you write a fucking article that claims to speak for all queer people and speaks over me on that, we're going to have a fucking problem. But generally, I understand that on a personal level for each individual person, that sucks.
Right.
And I want to take that away from anyone. That is a very uncomfortable thing, particularly with how much lesbians tend to die in particular in media. They tend to die a lot.
Right.
And that is a problem throughout a lot of media. However, bury your gays as a trope, as an issue in media, is a complicated topic that's hard to distill down. But there's a couple of hallmarks of it that tend to be true. Bury your gays is not a gay person dying. Pushing it that far, I think, is a problem. Because then you're starting to say gay people at all, in all media across the board, cannot be imperiled. You must put them in bubble wrap and they must be safe at all times, which I
Right.
think is bad storytelling.
I
And
agree.
also, history is full of queer heroes that fought back against fascism, whose names we will never know, who died without being out, and who died in service to the cause. It's not just straight people that can die for everybody's liberty and everybody's freedom. And that's something that a lot of, I think, media that's pushing certain narratives likes to erase the contributions of queer people. What Bury Your Gays is specifically, and I apologize to Bradley because I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I can tell he's starting to tell that I can have a lot of thoughts on this. Bury Your Gays, some of the hallmarks of it specifically, I don't think apply here, because the biggest hallmark of it is that in the Bury Your Gays trope, generally, gay people are shown to be, or queer people are shown to be more expendable than their straight counterparts. And Bresso just fucking died
Right. He was the
3
arc one
episodes
death.
ago.
Right.
Bresso died. Later people are going to die. Cinta is not more expendable than any of the other characters.
No.
And also one of the hallmarks of it, and this is where I think the show runs into a problem, there is a tendency for queer characters to come out and then immediately die.
Okay.
I know you're going to be tempted to cut this out, but I got to insist that you leave it in because it is by far the best example of this. We have to talk about Supernatural.
Oh God.
I'm sorry, we do.
I know who
It
you're
is,
talking about
it
too.
is
Yeah.
hands down the best example of a show absolutely burying the gay here.
Okay.
So, for those of you who have never watched Supernatural, don't go listen to the Mystery Spotcast instead. But for those of you who have not watched Supernatural, there is a very famous ship on Supernatural called Destiel. And this is the characters of Dean Winchester, who is one of the main two brothers in the show, and Castiel, who is an angel on the show. Now, throughout the entire show, people were shipping Dean and Castiel. Like, the show made jokes about it, the show made nods to it. The show very, very genuinely queer baited. It's a thing we can't get into it. But in the third to last episode of the show, I think, there's a moment where, like, for some reason, I don't know the context, he confesses actually being romantically in love with Dean. And because confessing this is a moment of pure happiness for him, he immediately goes to Turbo Hell. And after 15 seasons, 16 seasons, whatever, we never see him again. He is briefly mentioned as having gotten out of Turbo Hell. We never see him again. So the character came out and then immediately went to Turbo Hell.
Interesting.
So this is why Supernatural is both gay and homophobic at the same time.
Oh, well, this isn't the first time they've done that, so.
Although this is the first time Supernatural has been gay and homophobic at the same time. But it is probably the example for this. I will also compare it to this show, where we did know in season 1 that Vel and Cinta were a couple. But
Right.
because they didn't physically express that on screen, it felt like they were confirming it in this episode.
Right.
That's
true. I guess if you don't really
felt like it,
the actual text, what
but
does
it
it
wasn't
say?
in the text. Yeah.
Because if the actual text doesn't say in the first season they are in a relationship, then I guess it's all inferred.
They say they love each other explicitly, and they hold hands, and they're very clear that they're in other characters talk about that they're in a relationship. So it's not that it comes out of nowhere, but it's the fact that the show did not allow them to kiss on screen in the first season, and now they have to rush to make up for lost time does make it feel that way to me.
Got it.
When I watch this. Do you have thoughts on Cinta's death? Because I had literally so many.
You clearly have too many.
I've been thinking about this a lot. Well, I alluded to it a couple times. It's particularly because I read an article that pissed me off.
Oh, okay. Well,
That made me very angry, and half of that was me responding to this, I'll be blunt, incredibly fucking condescending article that I read about it. And I was like, shut the fuck up. I will now address some of these points.
I will say it was for me, at least the first view, it was shocking because I wasn't
Yes.
expecting it. You know what I mean? I knew somebody was going to die because, as we know, this every arc will have what I call a super death or like a main character death that like is more important than the other ones because it's someone we've been following since the first season or something along those lines, right? So it's always like a very important character will die. And Brasso was the first arc, and now Cinta is our second arc death. I was shocked that she died. I did think it was slightly unnecessary only because it kind of seems a little like killing someone for the sake of having a big name death, whatever. It's very Rogue One in that, well, everybody's gonna die anyway, so don't get too attached to anybody kind of thing. But I I I don't know. I felt like I guess I don't really know who else it could have been this arc, like other than
Could have been Vel.
could have been Vel, but that would have
Could have been
felt
Vel.
also cheap too. I don't
My
know.
issue with that is knowing where they were planning to go with Mon's arc. Vel kind
Yeah.
of needs to be alive for that. And the
Well,
arc with Mon and
right.
Cinta would have been different, but I think it would have been so different that I don't know if it would have been a natural
Yeah.
continuation of Mon's arc. I do agree that one of the things I don't like about how this storyline was handled is the pointlessness of it again rings more hollow in the context of everything.
Right.
I think that the pointlessness of Brasso's death doesn't feel as like it doesn't draw as much blood. Sorry to
Right.
Brasso, like I love Brasso and I was sad when he died. It doesn't draw as much blood for me because of like the context surrounding the character of Cinta.
Right.
And here, the pointlessness of it seems like a point they were making, but also they never really follow up on this. And this is what is quickly emerging to be my main criticism of this season. They introduce a lot of things that absolutely are made weaker by the fact that there is no follow up.
Right. Because I thought that this is actually the arc that Willman was supposed to die.
Yes.
And because we didn't get that follow up in the essentially the third episode, like it was only his arc was only in the first two episodes. It was like naturally you would think, oh, he's going to hang out with Saw Gerrera, so he's obviously going to die. Like it's just the death flag was death flagging, like when he went with Saw Gerrera, and they just never get there. And not that I'm not saying that he's not an interesting character, but he doesn't have a lot to do the rest of the show. At least I don't remember if he does, and that's also a bad thing that I don't remember because it wasn't impactful or it wasn't as interesting as it could have been if he had more to do, I guess, in the first half of the show. Because he's just kind of a passenger at the rest of the show. He's just kind of with the rebels, and it's not really that, I mean, that much going on or that interesting. So
Right.
I feel like he would have been more impactful as a character if this was his moment to die or this was his thing, doing something that he thought he was doing for the rebellion or whatever.
Yeah, that would have also felt incredibly pointless, but I think it would have been something to better play off of
Right.
for like where the characters go, and particularly where we know Luthen ends up in the context of the rest of the rebellion.
And I don't think that every death has to be meaningful in every situation, but it is kind of weird that both deaths so far are accidental or just shooting for the sake of being shot. Like it's not necessarily like, yeah, the stormtrooper was trying to shoot them, but it's also kind of like he didn't necessarily like he wasn't aiming for one or the other. It was both of them, right? And Cassian has plot armor
Right.
that he has to survive to the last
That's
episode.
what
So,
plot armor means, by the way. Cassian
right.
actually does have plot
He
armor here. He
genuinely
does
has this.
actually have
Yes,
to survive the events
correct.
of the show.
So I think that yeah, his was definitely more pointless. I think this one sucks more so because it's kind of like she dies because of people that don't matter necessarily right now.
And we never get to see, like, Vel gives her wonderful monologue that we're talking about in a minute, where she's
Yeah.
absolutely ripping Sam's fucking skin off his face, which is a great monologue.
Hmm.
But we never really get to see him
Right.
like change as a result of this. We never get to see
Yeah.
him change as a result of this, and we really don't get to see her change as a result of this. She
No.
will mention Senta one more time over the course of this,
Right.
once that I can recall, because she's barely in the third arc.
Yeah.
And her relationship in the fourth arc is more about her relationship with Cassian. But I think this exact plot line could have been done better with more time, and please talk to some more queer people. I don't even want to say like you didn't talk to any. Please talk to more before
Right.
you do this, or maybe Google bury your gaze before you
Before
do this
you do
exactly
this.
like this,
Yeah, because I feel like
so
it's
that
just
we can
somebody could
what
have
to
looked this
avoid.
up. Yeah.
Here's one of my things. Here's one of my controversial writing stances is I think that there are a lot of writers and a lot of creatives out there who are very, very scared of doing anything with characters that might be seen as a problem or might be seen as giving that character flaws or using that character in a way in a story that's problematic. And I think that's a perfectly valid and actually, frankly, a fear that writers should have. What they should do with that, though, is do their research and talk to people who are parts of communities that they are not a part of and figure out how to do the story they want to in a way that does not ring like a problem. Because the reverse of this is you wind up with stories where I'll just use queer people as an example because that's the group that I'm part of. It is very frustrating to read stories in which the gay male character, who is the gay best friend or whatever, is not allowed to have any flaws or really any personality at all because the writer wanted to include a gay man, but they didn't want to make the audience see that gay man as problematic, or they didn't want the audience to see the usage of a gay man in a particular way as problematic. I think
Right.
gay people in media should be allowed to be messy and even at times villainous. And I also think that they should be allowed to be in mortal peril. But the flip side of that is, as a creative, you have to know how to do it in such a way that is sensitive. That is why sensitivity readers exist. They exist for the sole purpose of reading your material and coming back to you with this is how this felt as a person from a different marginalized group than the writer is necessarily.
Hmm.
And I think this show, Andor, is a very clear case of what happens when those voices are not strong enough, or they're not prevailing, or there just weren't enough of them, or whatever happened to make this happen the way that it did, of something that should work in the context of the show, but because of the exact way it's done, it rings really sour to a lot of. And that's a lesson that I think should be taken away from both how this is handled in this particular piece of media and also the response.
So do you want me to keep in the supernatural bit, or you want me to keep in the really good monologue at the end? 'Cause I'm just kidding.
I mean, look, this is the one and only time you will hear me insist upon keeping in the supernatural bit. I am
Okay.
fine with you keeping every other time I complain about cutting every other time I complain about supernatural. Moving on from all of that, Cyril also just watches someone die, and I'm pretty sure this is the first time Cyril's ever seen someone die.
Okay.
I'm like, I can't remember him ever seeing that either during
The
the
Ferric stuff?
botched raid on Ferrex or the riot on Ferrex. I can't remember him actually having to watch someone die.
Hmm.
We get this absolutely incredible shot of the police speeders like pulling up, and then there's a drone shot down of the truck pulling away, which is fucking amazing. And I'm so glad. I feel like Faye Marseille gets really overlooked in the cast of this show. That's Vel.
Okay. I was like, you got to be more specific because I don't know
Faye
everybody's name.
Marseille, who plays Vel, really gets overlooked.
Yes.
And she's up against like powerhouse actors like Stellan Skarsgård and Diego Luna, who are giving these incredible monologues. Genevieve O'Reilly in season 2 gets an incredible monologue. Forrest Whitaker gets multiple monologues because Forrest Whitaker. So I need to give Faye Marseille her flowers because she got one monologue and she nailed it.
Right.
Like, it's so good. The context sucks, but it's so good.
Section 5. At ISB headquarters, Partagaz meets with Lonnie and Hurt. He informs them that Dr. Gorst has been moved to Coruscant to lead a new Imperial program. He assigns Lonnie and Hurt to monitor it, and Lonnie appoints Hurt to take the lead. Late at night, Bix retrieves a hidden vial from the ceiling and takes her drugs. Cassian wakes to find her out of bed, staring out the window at a signal tower flashing for a new mission. Later, at the Imperial Navy facility, Dr. Gorst is ambushed by Bix inside his office. She restrains and gags him, then subjects him to the same torture that he once used on her. She escapes the building and reunites with Cassian, who detonates explosives, destroying the naval facility. As the two walk away, Bix smiles in vengeance.
I one thing I think is really interesting about the ISB scene is that military intelligence is starting to move in on the ISB. So we are already starting to see the decline of the ISB as
Right.
we go forward in this season. That they were getting military intelligence stuff and military assets in season 1, and now the tables are turned. Military intelligence is getting more power in the imperial hierarchy, so now they're moving in and taking some of the ISB stuff.
Right.
And as somebody who has been on teams that are starting to be phased out as a result of another team coming in and getting their stuff, that has happened to me in the past. It absolutely sucks
Right.
to have somebody in there. I need to shout out the line "calibrate your enthusiasm."
Hurt is one of the he is the he's what Cyril wants to be, I feel like. I feel like
I
Cyril
think
wants to be what Hurt is.
I think Hurt and Cyril are essentially the same character.
Yeah.
They are whiny little overgrown twinks who do not know what they are doing and are constantly and massively over their head, but have a hugely inflated sense of their own self importance. I actually don't have a lot of notes on this
I
section.
mean, there's not much to
What
say other
actually is?
than it was
Well,
cool, like that she got her revenge,
well,
I mean,
I mean, I will say this. I'm frustrated by the
right,
end of this arc. In fact, this may be the real one thing that I dislike. Because
okay,
I don't think I even took a note on the Bix takes drugs before the flashing light for
right.
the new missions scene. Because I'm not sure what the point of it was.
I was
And I'm not
gonna
sure what the
bring that up,
point of
yeah.
it in the broad overarching narrative of the episode was, and I don't know what the point of it was in the broad overarching narrative of Bix's story. Because here's the thing is we have seen her within the context of this arc explicitly be shown in the last 2 episodes to be abusing drugs.
Right,
And in this final sequence, she takes them and then she goes and she does this mission. But in the broader context of the big storyline, because we never get any follow up on the drug thing, that's just dropped in the next arc.
right,
I have to wonder what the point of this ending was. Like, she got her vengeance on Dr. Gorst, and that's great. Internally, that's a fantastic step to where she is overcoming her trauma
right.
and she is actually able to do something like actionable that helps her, but also helps the larger rebellion. That's a great step. I understand that. I also love it in the context of episode 4, where she talks about, I want to win the war. I want to be doing stuff. I don't need to be protected. Her going and getting her vengeance, taking out this very important asset. I get that. That's great. Why do we need this shot of her with the drug? Why did
Yeah.
either this episode arc not end with her not using the drugs and then going and getting Gorse,
I was literally about
or
to say that, yeah.
her deciding to stop taking them after she has taken out Gorse? Either one of these could have worked. The absence of a clear stinger to this arc is what's bothering me about it,
Right.
because it just seems like she takes drugs and does a thing, and then the drugs are completely written out of the show. Which, because the drugs subplot has been handled, in my mind, so realistically and so well over these 3 episodes, to have it just disappear is one of the biggest problems to me with how the show is setting up the narrative. I understand the overarching arc of Bix gradually overcoming her trauma and finding new ways to deal with it until she eventually finds ways that are healthy. But I don't love that we don't get any closure on this. And in fact, we do get a specific shot of her taking the drugs before the lights start going out.
Right. And I think what they should have done, at least or it seems like what maybe the plan might have been, was that like she was sneaking it like while Cassian was sleeping. I would almost imagine like the plot should have been Cassian catches her taking the drugs, tells her, "You don't do that anymore. Oh, look, we have a new mission." That mission absolves her of her trauma in some capacity, and she's now
In
healing. So
some
she's like,
capacity,
I
yeah.
don't need it anymore, theoretically.
Right. Or even doing something like that to where this thing with the drugs and this thing with Cassian come to a head
Right.
would have made it more clear that, like, okay, maybe Cassian's starting to understand that his overprotectiveness has consequences.
Right. There's, yeah,
Maybe
something there not is
I
missing.
don't love to speculate and like the show should have done this exact plot line
Right.
as opposed to what we have in the text. But in this case, I'll indulge in it a little bit because that one specifically,
It's
like
a
if
bit
Cassian
weird.
had to confront her and had to confront directly and realized and had a moment of character to realize what his overprotectiveness was doing to her,
Hmm.
that she did not feel like she was comfortable working with him as an equal partner and was sort of using these drugs to kind of dull herself instead of
Right.
like confronting her trauma and dealing with it, and gave her that opportunity as well to work with him to do that, but also let her take the lead. Because she also, this is something that's not clear in the Dr. Gore stuff, she seems to be taking the lead on it.
And she's
It's
very
her mission.
coherent. Yeah.
Yeah, it's her mission. So I guess I didn't understand
Yeah. It seems like it was
in the
almost out of
context.
order.
It's very abrupt
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And it didn't go anywhere. I did love that Dr. Gorse went and got himself a little treat at the store when he was doing his late night torture.
That was really weird. Like,
That
it
was
was like
really funny.
really funny though.
I also loved the you could see the exact moment he recognized who Bix was.
I like how he also recognizes her because it would be
There's
very easy for them to be like, "Oh, I don't recognize you because I'm doing so many horrible things." Like,
he doesn't to start out with.
right.
But he said a line specifically to her in season 1 and she repeats it back to him in season 2.
Yes.
And there is another trope, but based on a very famous line actually that involves Ming Na Wen.
Oh,
So there's kind of a Star Wars connection. In the Mortal Kombat movie, there is a sequence in which Ming Na Wen's character has confronted another character named Bison. And I don't know these fucking characters because I don't know fucking Mortal Kombat.
okay.
I've watched the scene,
Sure.
but Ming Na Wen confronts character of Bison who destroyed her village and killed her family.
Sure.
And she's like, surely you don't remember me. You did this horrible thing, yada, yada, yada. And Bison says, I'm almost exactly quoting here. I haven't looked it up. This is just from memory. The day that Bison graced your village was the most important day of your life. But for me, it was Tuesday. And so the idea is when you're doing this many atrocities, it is really hard to remember specific one.
I love how you pulled from this random movie that you barely remember and you didn't pull from Avengers and you didn't do the Wanda and Thanos line.
Because the Mortal Kombat movie is the trope namer. The trope is, for me, it
Oh,
was Tuesday.
that's okay. Interesting. I was like, where did this random movie come from that you were talking
It is
about?
the trope namer for the, but for me, it was Tuesday trope.
Gotcha.
Is specifically from this Mortal Kombat movie. As
I
much
guess
as
it
I
is kind
love
of
my
similar. Yeah.
queen Wanda Maximoff,
I was gonna say,
she did not do it first. Thanos did not do it first.
okay. But now that I see that it's almost identical, like in the phrasing and everything, like it's very similar in that
Mm-hmm.
she's like, "You took everything from me," and he's like, "I don't even know who you are." Like, it's very similar in that.
We will see another wonderful version of this later in Andor.
Oh,
Andor
oh,
will
that's
do
right.
this exact same concept,
That's
but
right.
even better than
Even
this.
better. That's right.
In one of single-handedly the most amazing scenes in the show. And RIP to Dr. Gorse. You were a piece of shit, and I'm glad you're dead.
There we go.
And I guess you really didn't like those screams after all, huh, buddy? Anyway, Bradley, what are your final thoughts on this episode?
My final thoughts on this episode were it's definitely the best of the arc. I think that it's the most exciting. It's definitely a festive evening. There's a lot of stuff that happens in this episode that I really enjoyed. I almost felt like this could have been like a singular by itself kind of episode. It would have been fine. I really liked it. They did need a little bit of the setup from the first two, but I mean, for the most part, this is it's a great standalone. I love it on its own. As for the arc itself, I think that some of the plot lines are extraneous. Like I genuinely don't think the Willman plot line really is necessary. I get that it's important to show like Saw Gerrera's his kind of
Yeah.
decline and then that, he is important. However, honestly, I don't know. I think if you took out that entire plot line, it really doesn't change much in the broader context. I also think that Mon gets a little shafted in this arc. I don't think she's as prominent in this arc, and she's kind of a passenger for most of it. And everything kind of happens to her in this one. Now, to be fair, more stuff she'll get more stuff later on. But in this particular arc, as a main character of the show, I just feel like, which they see the show and then marketing and everything seems to forget that Mon Mothma is one of the biggest characters on the show, but that's another topic for another conversation. I think she does get shafted a little bit. So, but I like how this is setting up Gorman. However, this is not the best Gorman plot line, unfortunately. And I think that this whole bit honestly could have been shrunken down into maybe one full, really nice episode, and then that was set up for the next three, which are the most important.
I mean, it's good. It's good TV. Like, it's enjoyable to watch. I think everything that 100% needs to be in these episodes in order to make the next block of episodes work is in these episodes. It's a lot of good setup. The Gore characters are very interesting on their own. Like, the world is very interesting. For what little time we have with Gorman, these episodes really speed run, kind of explaining to us about the fashion world and all of its, like, what we need to know in order to understand this world and for other people to be able to build off this world in the future. But I'll be honest, the cracks in this second season of the show are never more prominent than they are in this. Everything that is wrong with the second season, everything that is suffers as a result of these being truncated seasons. And mind you, I'm glad that we have this show at all. I'm glad it got to tell the story. But the cracks that are in this second season as a result of it being smashed down are the most prominent. We have characters speed running their arc. We have characters whose arcs are not given time to breathe. We have characters whose arcs are not even properly finished by the end of this, and they are not acknowledged going forward into later episodes, and that retroactively makes them kind of suffer. We have it's so much good content, but the problem is this is where the stress fractures of the show really show for me. And I hate that I have to come on here and say that. I would just love to give Andor a tongue bath for 12 episodes, but part of doing good media analysis and good criticism and what we do on the show is the ability to take something that you liked and look at the parts that don't work.
Right.
And be able to talk about why those parts don't work and what that might tell us about the piece of media, what that might tell us about the context in which it exists, what might tell us about the choices that it made. And that's something, a standard that I hold myself to on the show is, even as much as I love Andor, and I love the second season of Andor, I need to be willing to talk about where points are that it doesn't work. And it is the most glaringly apparent for me in this second arc of the show. Bradley, what are we covering next week?
Next week, we're starting a new arc
Yay!
with the episode Messenger.
Exciting. Pluggables that I will not have to record 12,000 fucking times this week because I got a new microphone, and thus far that new microphone is working.
I love it.
Knock on wood. Fingers crossed. Bradley works on a whole bunch of reality TV. If you like reality TV, please watch it. It keeps him employed. That includes such shows as Married to Medicine, Temptation Island, King's Court, Queen's Court, and later seasons of The Circle. Newest one is King's Court, and that is coming out on Bravo. July the 13th, I have received a favorable recommendation of it from Bradley.
Okay.
So that's what you told me. You told me I should watch it. I don't know if that means the show is good, but that just means Bradley's recommended I watch it. Mind you, he did not recommend I watch Temptation Island. I did that on my own. You can find me on the Star Wars TTRPG podcast For Light and Dice, a TTRPG set in the High Republic era that returns from hiatus this month with all new episodes. You can also find gay thriller mystery novels that I write. Those are called Beach House Studios. They are available on Amazon, Kobo, Barnes & Noble, and you can have your local library request them through Overdrive. All right, Bradley, we knew this one was going to be long. Let's pray it's the longest one. It's not going to be the longest one, is it? It's going to be episode 9.
We'll see.
It's going to be episode 9. My money's on 9. I think 9 is going to be... I don't think anything has come close to just solo, the two of us, our review of the Ahsoka episode of Mandalorian. I think that one still beats it. Anyway, run our socials. Thank you for listening to Gold Squadron Gaze. Did Charles fuck something up? Email us at goldsquadrongaze@gmail.com and let us know. You can follow us on BlueSky, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Gold Squadron Gaze. Subscribe to us on YouTube at Gold Squadron Gaze, where we post full episodes of this podcast. If you like the podcast, you can also rate us and review us on your favorite podcast app of choice. Please join us next week and every week for another episode of Gold Squadron Gaze.
was gonna say you didn't even bring up the fact that in Supernatural they have a lesbian character who dates Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. That is canon in that piece of media. She goes to Oz with Dorothy and they hook up and
In
but you don't wanna
Supernatural.
you don't wanna you don't wanna learn that.
See, now I don't know. Hold on, hold on. I am texting my sources. It is very important. I get a quick answer. Did a lesbian character on Supernatural date Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, or is Bradley fucking with me?